Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, as you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, we are going to be talking about when. Yes, that's right. The difference between when and if in Yu-Gi-Oh! Which honestly is one of the lamest things in the entirety of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a stupid discernment, a stupid mechanic, a foolish nuisance within the general mechanics of Yu-Gi-Oh! So, if you don't know, there are two words utilized if a card is going to activate on summon or whenever its activation requirement is met. There's the if effect. For example, on Aliware, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add. And there's the when effect. When this card is special summoned, you can. What is the difference between these? Well, first of all, if always goes off. As long as the monster is on the field when a new resolve is activated or activatable, you're able to get the effect. So if it leaves the field in the chain that it was summoned in, it doesn't get the effect. That's understandable. The card is not on the field when the activation requirement happens, so therefore it doesn't get to activate. However, with when effects, when states that it has to be the last thing to happen in the chain. Meaning, well, we'll go into a little bit more of this, but basically that means that, for example, if Superbia was summoned off of the copying effect of a Dark Lord to copy a contact that is in the grave, it will miss timing. The reason for this is because it is special summoned, and then something else happens. The card gets shuffled back from the grave into the deck. So, the last thing to happen was not the Superbia being summoned. Meaning, it misses timing. I'll show you an example of this in a second. Similarly, Ice Hand and Fire Hand have when effects as well. When this card is in your possession, is destroyed by an opponent's card, and sent to the graveyard, you can target a monster or target a spell trap and destroy it. So, this means that if you are able to, say, chain something to the to this card, chain something and then chain another thing to destroy the card. So, for example, you chain MST, and then you activate your Raigeki break, pitching a card, targeting this card. It will miss timing. It won't be able to destroy any of your cards. Cool. Fantastic. Gear Town has this limitation as well. However, there are a few other cards that have when effects that work slightly differently. So, when a monster would be summoned, or when a level 5 or higher monster would be special summoned, you can. Pretty simple, right? This one works slightly differently. When it's with these, this means that if, say, for example, you activate a spell card that would summon something, the summon would be successful if you don't negate the spell. The reason for this is because the spell has to go to the graveyard as the last thing in the chain. That is the last thing that happens. The spell goes to grave. Okay? The monster is on the field, but the spell has to go to the graveyard. So, when the monster hits the field, when it is summoned, something else has to happen. So, it misses timing. Kind of. Technically. Now, granted, with these mechanics, the when effect for the missing of timing on all of these cards, where it just misses timing because it's not in the right chain, sure, that makes sense. That doesn't make sense. No reason for that to happen. It should all just be if effects. When it comes to the Solemn Judgment, as well as Steel Swarm Roach, mechanically, it does make sense. It gives a little bit of a boost to things that are special summoned from cards, from spell cards, as well as with Solemn Judgment specifically, it basically is saying, like, only inherent summons. Things like Link Summoning, things like Synchro Summoning, things like inherent summons such as Cyber Dragon or Pankratops, those can be negated, which does, that is a mechanically different thing. Granted, with Superbia, it's not really a mechanically different thing. You're not really doing anything differently, right? Technically, you can work around that and potentially make it miss timing. You can make like U-Bell and stuff like that also miss timing. But all in all, should it? No, not really. It changes things mechanically, but not really in a fair or interesting way, and it is incredibly confusing. Imagine trying to explain this to someone who is new to the game. All of a sudden, their Dark Lord Superbia doesn't work. How do you explain this, especially in tournament? Why did my card not work? Why does my card not have the ability to special summon? Well, because it says when. Could you imagine how stupid that is? Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to show you the examples of these cards actually in action and what they mean. Okay, so here I have set up our little experiment where we have access to our Superbia. All we have to do is wait for my opponent, and I'm going to show you why missing the timing is dumb. Okay? And I'm going to show you in two separate ways. Well, my opponent didn't do anything. But I'm going to show you in two separate ways. As soon as my opponent does something, I'll show you. Okay, so my opponent has activated the effect of Diamond Dude. So what I am going to do is instead of negating it, I'm going to activate one of my two first Dark Lords, and we are going to special summon out Superbia. Okay? Superbia says specifically when this card is special summoned from your grave. So, because it was not the last thing in the chain to have happened, it misses timing. Okay? Lots of effects have this. This is notable with specifically cards like Solemn Judgment and the like, which we've talked about previously, that have when effects for summoning. Things like Steel Swarm Roach, Judgment, etc. that would stop a summon don't work on things like fusion summons, which hopefully I'll show you here in a second. But I do want to also show you that if my opponent were to do something else, we would be able to chain something like... Okay, it's not going to happen right now, but I'll show you the next, basically what happens with if effects. Okay, so, opponent's activating the same card. I'm going to activate my first Dark Lord once again, and we are going to now special summon to our side of the field Aluber. Aluber says, if this card is normal or special summoned. This is why I have such a problem with just verbiage in Yu-Gi-Oh! And why I really don't like this. This card gets to activate. Why does Superbia miss timing? Because it's a when effect. That's it. Is there any point to having something be a when effect and miss timing? No, not really. Now, granted, for things like Steel Swarm Roach or Solemn Judgment, sure, that being a when effect does make sense because mechanically it changes the way that the game works. But when something misses timing, that is one of the most infuriating and unfounded, just dumb reasons to have something not work. Superbia does this. Gear Town misses timing. The Fire and Ice Hands, which I currently have one in my hand, these guys miss timing because it's when this card is destroyed. All of these things having the ability to not activate because they weren't activated in the right spot is absurd and doesn't really make sense. Granted, it's a mechanic of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's why I don't, it's why the title of the video is what it is. So I'm now going to show you the Solemn Judgment as well as Steel Swarm Roach stuff. So let me set that up. Okay, wow, this has taken a while. My opponent has activated Polymerization while I control Steel Swarm Roach, which says during either player's turn, when a level 5 or higher monster would be special summoned, detach material, negate the special summon, destroy it. Okay? That's what we're going off of. My opponent is now going to fusion summon into... Drumroll, please. This also works with Judgment as well. They're going to go into Destiny Hero Dangerous. Now, what is not activatable? Steel Swarm Roach. Why? Because it says when instead of if. Why is this the case? I don't know. It's a mechanic of Yu-Gi-Oh! Again, really annoying, really silly, really dumb. Anyway, let's move along. Now, when I understand mechanically why the when effect exists and why it works the way that it does, basically, if something is happening prior to this activating, the activation window isn't when, it's like it misses timing, right? It makes sense mechanically, it makes sense logically, but does that necessarily make it a good effect or a good mechanic of the game? No, it's incredibly confusing. For a casual player, how are you supposed to know what the heck is going on, right? I've already mentioned this. I've already talked about how it just doesn't make sense. It's not really good. And honestly, yeah, it's this whole thing where when being a card effect that just like happens to be from an older time, because a lot of these cards, a lot of them are from an older period of Yu-Gi-Oh! Prior to if effects, prior to a lot of these various different things, or they are specifically designed in that way where they are designed around not being able to stop specific things, not being able to stop like a monster that is summoned off of a spell, right? Which is like, okay, sure, if that's the mechanics, totally understandable, but when it comes to things like Gear Town or Dark Lord Superbia or the like, it's not cool. It's something that, like, better players can technically play around and allow for, like, missed timings, but most decks are bad if they have a missed timing, right? Think Yang Zings are a great example of this that I haven't brought up. Yang Zings, a lot of them have when effects, right? When this card is destroyed by battle or card effect. I think this one's also a when, right? When this card is destroyed. You know, I think this one as well. Or when this card is destroyed. So a lot of them have these similar effects. And it's that when that allows for missed timing, right? I don't know. I just think that there is basically no real good justification, other than maybe, like, again, with Solemn Judgment or Roach, where there should be a when effect versus an if effect. I feel like most, if not all effects, should just have that if clause in there instead of the when. Having it be otherwise is lame. But yeah, that's basically all of my thoughts. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy it. If you did, a like is very much appreciated, and if you want to check out more content like this as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.